the work that ASAM has been doing, I hope to think that we're actually promoting the use of vegetable proteins worldwide as well. We think that soybean meal will represent over 40% of the vegetable protein sources by 2015, and when it comes to use of vegetable proteins, we think that probably the top two going into aquafeeds is going to be soybean meal or soy, and use of corn gluten meal, because we need to have a methionine source for the feeds. So I hope you'll permit me to talk a little bit specifically about soy, since I do work for the American Soybean Association International Marketing Program, and a little bit about SPC as well. I think we all have heard enough about that America is the largest producer of soy in the world. So obviously we have a very direct interest in promotion of use of soy in aquaculture. And we are the largest producer of soybean meal. So we think that by 2020 we're going to be supplying a major proportion of the protein requirements for aquaculture. And we think that the market value of soy proteins is going to increase rapidly as well. So the use of soybean meal, soybean protein concentrate, which I'll talk about in a moment, soybean oil, and soy lecithin are all going to increase in the aquafeed industry. And there's something else that I think we should all be aware of. The American industry is not just focusing on the soybeans that we have now. We're focusing on the soybeans that are coming down the line in the future. Now, one of the things that is of critical importance to a lot of seafood consumers is that seafood contains a high level of omega-3 amino acids. Well, the U.S. soybean industry is in the process of developing soybean varieties that actually already have high omega-3s in the soybeans themselves. So we're looking at the future where different specialty products of soybeans will be coming down, which will help improve even more the use of soybeans in aquaculture. Soybean protein concentrate is something we see a lot of potential for as well. When it comes to marine species, the difficulty with soybean meal is that it goes up to maybe around an average of 47 to 48% for a high-pro soybean meal. When it comes to marine aquafeeds, we're talking about feeds that require between, say, 43 to 50% crude protein content in those feeds. Adding in soybean meal, you can only add in so much because of that high protein level in the feeds. So that means that we can maybe include about 25 to 35% soybean meal in current aquafeeds for marine species. But in the future, as the cost of fish meal increases and the cost of soybean protein concentrate, which is a concentrated form of soy protein, decreases, we see that there's a potential use for soybean protein concentrate to replace that fish meal. Now, typical fish meal has about 65% protein. Soybean protein concentrate has around 65% protein as well. And so we think that in the future that will become a cost-effective alternative to fish meal. And it'll also reduce some of the concerns of internutritional factors that some marine fish farmers have. Although it's not cost-effective now, one of the things that I think is very forward-looking of the American Soybean Association International Marketing Program is that we're doing the research now so that when those prices do become attractive, that the industry will have that information on hand to use in their formulations. And you can see here I've included a link to the actual soybean protein concentrate for aquaculture handbook that the ASAIM has put out to the industry. What is the future of soy? Well, with a static supply or a decreasing supply of fish meal, we see that it's going to increase the demand for soy. Renewable plant protein sources are needed, and so that means it's going to usually mean vegetable sources. In fact, I met recently with an organization in Malaysia that's looking to work on a very large production of tilapia. And one of their goals is to have an all-plant protein feed so they can label their feeds organic and sustainable. Soy, we heard about the qualities of soy. So the nutritional aspects of soy with a good amino acid profile is well suited for aquaculture. And by using vegetable proteins such as soy, we can reduce pressure on natural fishery stocks as well. Because the fish that are used now for fish meal may in the future become fish that are used for human consumption. So what are some of the conclusions from my presentation today? The demand for the demand for seafood products with static or declining wild production means that aquaculture will continue to increase very rapidly. We find that the expansion of aquaculture will increase in the marine sector in particular as wild sources diminish, and that offshore areas will be used as nearshore areas are either fully utilized or are put off limits. We find that sustainability will be stressed on more and more often, and this will be mandated by consumers through certification schemes or by people nearby in communities. We find that more species will be domesticated, and research will help identify the appropriate feeds for those species. And we know that the industry is moving towards feed-based systems, and that those feeds will incorporate more vegetable proteins. So I'd like to thank the people who really helped me with this presentation, Dr. Michael Creamer, who's the ASAIM Technical Director for the Global Program for Aquaculture, ASAIM, Dr. Victor Suresh, and other staff in the ASAIM. So I'm welcome to take any pictures. Any questions now? Did I do okay on time?
Okay, we got a number of questions. Let's start off with Gordon.
I heard a couple of years ago that they were going to ban, in Scandinavia, for example, they were going to ban giving fish meal to fish. Is that correct?
What they're doing is that they're constantly revising the amount of fish you can put into feeds. So they have what's called a fish in, fish out formula. And so what they're doing is that they're constantly trying to move that fish meal inclusion lower and lower and lower. I think the ultimate goal is eventually to eliminate the need for fish meal, but that's still a bit in the future for carnivorous marine species.
Andy?
You discussed about the soy protein concentrate.
Yes.
Is this in commercial production already by today?
It's being produced, but a lot of the SPC is being used for swine or for human consumption.
And the price is competitive with the fish meal right now?
It is not competitive with the fish meal. That's why while the ASIM is working on the potential for use, we understand that currently, economically, it doesn't make sense to use it except in very specialized circumstances. You may remember 2 years ago, I think, or 2 or 3 years ago when fish meal went up to $1,600 per ton. Mm-hmm. During that brief window, SPC became competitive, and we were very excited. But then fish meal came right down again, particularly with what happened in Chile with the collapse of the salmon industry. And so fish meal dropped in price, and so people went away from SPC again. But we have the information available for you when that does become competitive, so you know how much you can incorporate safely into those feeds.
Thank you.